Good evening. So tonight, as Jason is off in the distance doing other things, I'm going to give the traditional Friday night talk on basic Buddhist teachings. So I didn't really have a topic, but I had an idea that possibly I could talk a little bit about the forms, the way I've watched them from when I started practicing back in the early 70s up to the present time, and what I know, which isn't a tremendous amount. I'm not a scholar nor am I a historian, but what I know about different ways that a practice shows up, the different structures and forms. And so in some places, in traditional Zen, Soto Zen, even Rinzai Zen, and Korean practices, there's very intense control situations happening there. I have a friend, Bupmi, who was trained in Korean Zen. Is it what lineage is that? Do you know? Chogi? Anyway, I know that he had to go for one of his situations that he was in Korea and sit down and not be able to move. And of course, he's a Westerner, so he's not used to sitting on the floor so much. Anyway, he said it was really excruciating to sit through that ceremony. And I went to a ceremony called mountain seat ceremony, where they install an abbot or a priest of a particular temple. And so Heikiji-sama was his name. And I went to that, and this is probably in 1992, maybe, in Japan. And in the ceremony there, this went on all day, and I'm not Japanese, and also my joints don't bend so well, even back then, which I think I was in my 50s then. But it was very difficult to sit still with all of the rest of the people there who were all Japanese, and there were no cushions. They're just sitting on a hard wooden floor, and no zapatons, no sapus, whatever. But this is very difficult. But I was at that ceremony, wanted to be there for Soheki-sama was a friend of my son Takudo, or his given name is Mason. I actually received this that I wear from Soheki a long time ago, 30 years ago, a little over that. But I remember that, and also the very kind of intense formality and holding a certain form no matter what. As I'm sure you've noticed, I don't teach that way, even though early on when I participated in solitary retreats, I didn't hold to a form like that. But in group retreats, everyone is sitting very still, and there might be very little walking meditation or getting up, and you're not supposed to do that unless the gong is struck. So it was very difficult to hold still and not move and not pay attention to the fact that my body was really sore and hurting. This is back in the 70s. But because I didn't know about what to do about that, I just obeyed. I just did. I thought, well, I'm just not very good at this, and everybody else is doing fine. Of course, they weren't doing fine either. We had a chance to talk to them, which you shouldn't, because it's all functional speech. I don't know if any of you have ever been to a retreat of 2 or 3 weeks or a month or even a weekend. And if you're dealing with functional speech, you can't get to know the Sangha because you can't talk to them. So this is a very a negative situation that has happened. It happens everywhere. Happens in Shambhala, happens in Soto Zen, Rinzai Zen. There's some kind of a idea that these people have, and I'm not accusing all of the men, but it's probably in that area, that think there needs to be some kind of controlling of people in order to train them. And I come from having done a lot of this. My way of saying you should do this is that you should be the one that decides, not somebody bringing an arbitrary gong every 40 minutes. Also, the 20 minutes, 40 minutes, 20 minutes, 40 minutes, or whatever that is, that's a little bit ridiculous to just impose some kind of arbitrary time frame. So that's traditional traditional Japanese practice is an incense stick, which could be 40 minutes or something. So again, I'm not disagreeing with that, and I'm not saying in the sense that I don't think everybody should do what I'm doing, but I don't know, it just doesn't work out from when I practiced in that way. It was not particularly helpful. It was extremely painful. And so I guess where I'm going to try to make this in the line of, as you suggested, some kind of traditional understanding. So it goes back a long ways, just like in ancient times, monks had to be celibate. I think that's ridiculous. It's just ridiculous to do that, to impose that kind of situation. That being said, in ancient times, maybe that's the only way they could do that. Maybe that's the only way you could have an ongoing sangha is to change people's life so much. You have to sew a robe and you have to be celibate. And you can't eat anything after 12 noon. I don't know what the story is behind that. Maybe other people do. Maybe there's someone that could offer that information if you know. So I'm saying that what has to happen, the way I see it, is a person has to become responsible for their own practice as soon as possible, not count on somebody striking a bell. That being said, we do have someone who strikes the bell, the doan, and the doshi makes the offering. So we still have these formal practices that help us work with our awareness in terms of having the awareness do whatever it's doing, but then that awareness comes together in order to offer incense, in order to bow to the altar, in order to do all of these forms. Some of these forms I think are very, very helpful and necessary in order to train the mind. You have to have something that is besides just thinking kind thoughts. And I have nothing wrong with thinking kind thoughts. So in our situation, just to contrast, I'm sure some of you have been practicing in different directions for years. Maybe already know about all these structures and forms, whether you do it this way and you do this and you have to bow at this time or bow at that time. So I'm quite a bit looser in this area, having practiced in all those directions. I just feel like we should set up the form, and then each person should work with that form as best they can, not obey it, but to observe the form. That means observe when you just can't do that form. Maybe in the morning you don't feel well, so you're not punished because you don't come to sitting. Maybe that you don't even need an excuse. Just say I won't. But what we emphasize here is communication. You let people know that you won't be there. It's not about, they aren't going to necessarily say to you, why not? If they do, then you can either tell them or don't say anything. The same thing here with functional speech or noble silences. The other word for functional speech means if you want the salt and you're at a table, you can ask for it, but it has to be functional. You can't be gossiping with someone or chattering with someone about everyday situations or entertainment. So you can do that. And then noble silence is the other kind, the more, you could say more strict kind, where you don't talk at all, no matter what. You just don't talk. I participated in meditation retreats many times, many times, where both of those were used. And I didn't disagree. I didn't go against it. I didn't argue or try to talk someone out of it. But having done that, and now trying to set up a situation based on my experiences over the last number of years, what would be the best way to work with this? It's like, I think it's really good to empower somebody as soon as possible to be responsible for their practice and give them forms. Like we had a fellow come here for 2 months, and he probably sat over there and faced that wall as much, or maybe more than anyone here. And it was just a form, and he actually, his way of observing the form was to do the form. That doesn't mean he was any more sane than anybody else. But he also he was not, he was told that it's up to him to how to work with that. So then other people come and go, and if somebody is, I often say, I don't know what it's like to be you. So if you're sitting in here, if you're coming to the monastery and sitting, you already have something going for you that I would call some sincerity about training your mind. So you come here, someone comes in here, then you already have that, but I don't know what it's like to be you or to deal with your mind stream. So I would say, the way I say it is get in here, sit as much as you can. We even set up forums on Thursdays, 4 hours in the morning, 4 hours in the afternoon. We do that on Monday also. Is there any other days that there's a block sit available?
Saturday.
So Saturday. So we have all these things that are available where you're off in the distance, could turn on or even if you live down the street, you turn on your Zoom screen and there are people right there sitting in real time facing a wall. And so you have some support from what community? Community is very, very, I'll give you another one. Another very, very important. It's very important. But it's not about trying to get everybody to fall in line or follow the leader or obey. Some of this I learned from spending 4 years in the Marine Corps. It's not easy. That kind of control is about control or training or forms is about controlling people. The Uniform Code of Military Justice, if you read any of that, it's basically saying do this or don't do this. If you do this, you will get a court-martialed. If you're told to do this and you don't do it, then you don't get to decide anything. You have to follow orders. There is some area in there where if you're doing something that is completely against, but you can't be told to murder someone. Well, unless you're on the battlefield, then that's what that's about, murdering other people. Not so good. So I can go on and on about this, but maybe it'd be good to respond to some questions in this area. Yes, sir.
Allowing, would you say there's a difference between observing a form and practicing a form?
So my way of talking about observing is if you don't come to practice, if you just don't show up, but you're observing that you're not showing up, I think there's something to be said for that. You're responsible. You know why you're not there, and you know whether you're deceiving yourself. You're part of the community. You've agreed to do this. You know if you're a monastery resident, then you need to relate to these forms as directly as you can, especially if you're a fully ordained monk, and you need to be here as much as you can. And so what was the question?
I asked if you would say there's a difference between observing a form and practicing a form.
I'm not saying a big difference. There is some kind of nuance happening there that you could take it one or two directions, but practicing a form, I'm not saying you're not practicing the form when you're observing that you're not doing the form, because it's still about awareness. As you hear me, I practically shout it sometimes. It's not about success or failure. On the other hand, you need to have a setup, meditation hall where people come and sit in a very specific way that face the wall. This wall are for monks. And if somebody who is not ordained comes in and sits down over there, they are not ordered to leave, but it's observed. So if someone sits facing out and doesn't face in, that person will be observed for a while. If somebody comes in with a bright red stocking cap on, that's not the recommended thing, is to wear subdued color, either black or gray or something very subdued, just so that this place is very, very similar. The same every day you come in, it's very similar. There's no vibrant things happening in here. It's not an entertainment area, although there's things that are very vibrant, but they're quite often the same thing, other than maybe a flower arrangement, ikebana or something like that. So are you asking me about practicing, actually coming in here and chanting or practicing or meditating, as opposed to observing the form that you're not doing?
Exactly.
very, very personal. Very personal. If someone is not feeling well, not just sick to their stomach or something like that, but just not doing so well, mentally, emotionally, that needs to be respected with people. Not just saying, well, you need to come on and sit. Maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe, yes, go ahead.
Shadow bowing. Are we still training our mind when we're observing how we're not doing the forms?
Yes. And that's quite often missed in more traditional macho kinds of structures where, like we were just reading, or Hunyo was just reading about Suzuki, wasn't it Suzuki Roshi? His teacher thought that in order to train his monks, his students, he had to be really mean to them. Wasn't that it? Am I paraphrasing that fairly closely? This is in Japan back in the early 1900s. So, and that goes all the way back. And so again, I'm not saying you should, everybody should just do this the way I see it. Probably needs to happen in lots of different ways, but the people that come here to be trained either as monks or just come here for a weekend and might never see them again, or people that show up on Zoom. People need to practice however they can. They have children, have children, have jobs, have just all kinds of environmental things that could be different, not to mention all the things that are happening in your personal body. You know, some people are pretty ill with different kinds of sicknesses that compromise your way of practicing. Or their people's financial situations can be quite varied. So I'd say just do the best you can and practice. Try to practice as a community, as a group. This is why we have these talks. That's why on book study, I say, come and study. You don't have to understand it. You can have lots of questions around that because I'm very definite about it. It is about the awareness. It doesn't matter whether it's awareness that you understand it or awareness that you don't understand it. If you're endeavoring to understand it, that's the awareness, whether you succeed or not. This is just a way of working with relative truth and ultimate truth. Go ahead, sir.
Bowing. You often say how you don't teach what you were trained in, you teach what you see, and you were just saying how you want to empower us to be responsible for our own practice. So why, considering that, why do we have a uniform form that like the monastery resident is to follow?
Yes, and some of those, if you avoid the forms altogether, you'll be asked to leave. Maybe not right away, might give you a lot of space. There are people here that are fully ordained monks that are not aligning themselves with the forms the way I've asked others to do. You know that. But everyone's different. Everyone's wiring, everyone's way of working with authority. This is not about obeying anything. Are you one of them? What's your next question?
Shadow bowing. That's a great area for me to ask about because it's like you're asking us to do both things. Like you're asking us to do these forms, but you're also asking us to don't do what we're told.
I am.
Help.
Well, I'm here. Ask me questions about it. I want you to work with your consciousness, not just your thinking process. And there isn't any other way to do this. I can't just say stop thinking. You can't do that. Meet everything as it is where it's at. It's very difficult to do this, especially if you have, you're an intelligent man. It's not a compliment. It's an observation. You have a degree in English, I think. No, you don't have a degree.
I have a degree. It's just not in anything.
What is it in?
Liberal studies.
Well, liberal studies is a degree, isn't it?
Arguably.
You kind of thinking you're a worthless piece of, but you know what I'm saying. So I would say you could work with that, and you've lived here for years, so we work with that all the time. And you come and say, "Is it okay if I don't practice this afternoon? I need to go work on some project." And so you're kind of all over the place, and so that's a practice also. Community, very important. And some people can go and just sit there for hours and hours and hours. And other people, it's really a strain to sit there even for an hour. And that doesn't mean that the people who are sitting there for hours and hours and hours are somehow better or more advanced. It could be the other way around, or it could be half and half. Yes,
Bunya bowing, so are you saying that here in the monastery, a form has been, a standard has been set?
mhm.
And then as practicing bodhisattvas or monks or practitioners, then we have flexibility in how we come up against that standard?
Yes, I mean, that's simply put. It's not here to be obeyed, it's here to be observed. And so, and you'll know when you can feel it, that 15 people are in here all meditating during a retreat, and you're in the other room watching cartoons or something. You do that? No. So I'm saying that's helpful to do that, not to send somebody in to tell you, so you better get in there and sit or something like that. Oh, they will do that in Shambhala. And in Vajradhatu back in the 70s and 80s, they'd come and get you. You need to be in your sitting. You've been there. I've been there. I've been at the area where I'm told to come and sit or something. So, and at the time I just felt like that they're correct. I'm not, I don't know what to do. I'll just do what I'm told. Lots of area for questions here. Please don't hold back, especially if you have you're coming from a direction that maybe I've not touched on, because I've been kind of vague about this. Go ahead.
And you've always, along those lines that you were just describing, on occasion, if, especially like on a Sunday when we have many people here and they're all congregating in the white tower room waiting for you, someone may come in and say, oh, Sokuzan's gone in the Zendo.
Yeah.
Is that an appropriate announcement?
Yes. You know, there's different ways of working with it. Sometimes I come in and everybody's, raising hell, talking, gossiping about what, just talking about whatever. People come in, okay, then people stop. And I think that's the form that's important. I come in and we have some formality, and I don't mind being the one to do that. So I come in, I offer incense on behalf of everyone here. This is kind of a formal way of acknowledging I'm going to talk about the Buddha's Dharma if I can. And so I do that, and it becomes formal. Then we have questions, or I might give a 15, 20 minute, half an hour talk, whatever it may be. And then we have the rest of the time as questions about that. More, yeah, go ahead.
When you're bowing, so.
You're about to tell a joke.
No, but I'm. Somebody is though. Is that-
What is that, Wando?
Sokuzan in the car, maybe?
Oh, that was Elia.
Oh, Sokuzan is in the car and has her microphone on. What, go on with your question.
When you're bowing, again, just reflecting on the, maybe the situationality, if that's a word.
Yes.
I could recall when I first started coming to your Dharma study groups at your house.
In the 90s.
Yeah, early 2000, no, after you had moved to
Back.
in Bellevue. Anyway, we would stand in the kitchen, some of us, and talk, and then all of a sudden, for me anyway, it just felt like this vacancy in the room, and I realized it might be a couple minutes past 7, and I realized that you had already gone into the shrine room at the time because it was Shambhala. But you didn't call all of us to say, okay, I'm going to go into the shrine room, it's time to meditate. So it's, even in the situation that I described a minute ago in the White Tower room, making the announcement that you are entering the Zendo. On occasion, you've said, there may be people engaged in a conversation that's much more important than what you have to say.
I've been saying that in Shambhala for a long time. In Minneapolis, when I was there, we would have a Wednesday night book study or something. And I would go in and we sat in a circle in that situation and read about the book and talked about it. there was no teacher showing up there. I was not functioning as a teacher. But people would say, should I go get those people in the kitchen? They're still out there. And it was the same situation. I says, they know we're in here. They can, if they need to keep talking for a while. But I feel it's very necessary for people to talk to each other. It's a good idea. And in here, with that situation, it's a little bit different because we have a lot more people. And also this has more of a formal structure to it. As a teacher functioning that way rather than a book study where someone is a facilitator. But I've worked as a facilitator for 30, 35 years rather than a teacher. Yes.
I think what I'm trying to get to is when does the flexibility of a standard basically eliminate the standard behind?
So I suppose that could happen, but hasn't so far. I think there's some sincerity there. And also think of what we're doing. We're actually training our minds to see more clearly. We're not training our minds to get a degree in zoology. It's a different kind of training than is the conventional. It has some aspect of that to it. But it's a different kind of training where you won't even know, you will not even know the way in which your mind is trained. If you do, it's not wrong. But that's why I'm here to tell you, as you go along, you feel like you don't understand or you're getting worse or you're saying, do it anyway. Please continue, return to, so we have something like the 3 jewels. Return to the teacher, the teaching, the community, or the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha, whatever works for you. Return to that. You return to that because in that way you can continue and you will not necessarily be ambushed by hope and fear. Ambushed into thinking, oh, I can't keep doing this because. You just continue. Hopefully, if you have a teaching and you have a teacher, you have a community that has enough sanity. It's not going to be completely sane, but enough sanity so that you can continue to come back and make use of other people that are also trying to train their mind. They're working with their 3,000-year-old craziness coming from who knows where, other lifetimes. Have it as you will. Chisho, do you have a question?
Jishwaving, the individual freedom to practice and to observe the form feels like a Pratyeka Buddha path. Where is the vow of putting others before oneself or to be with others, to be with the Sangha? Where does that come into this equation?
I think Pratyeka Buddha or self-styled Buddha. I don't see where the way in which the forms are taught here are particularly promoting a self-styled Buddha. I'm not denying your insight into it, but I'm saying I don't think it's doing that. And part of the reason it's not doing that is because of the teacher. I don't have thousands of students. I don't even have hundreds. I have a few dozen, not very many. And so therefore I'm able to talk. If I can talk to anyone that takes this seriously, is going to want to talk to me. If they come here personally, that's the best. But if I talk to somebody once every few weeks or once a month or once every couple of months on Zoom, that seems to be enough to connection there where I can possibly help them with if they seem to be going off in that self-styled, I'm more enlightened than you are kind of thing. So did I get close to what you're looking for, or is there another?
Jishwaving, no, I'm wondering about the tension between having absolute freedom, especially for those who are, let's say, monks and those who have taken the vow. The freedom, so to say, to do whatever they want, still it is their practice because they are still observing. Tension between that and the vow they have taken to be with all people, especially the Sangha. So that tension is what I'm wondering. To me, the way you're describing it feels like people are practicing on their own, in their own way, in their own time, whether they show up at the book study or whether they show up at the sitting practice, it doesn't matter. Uh,
It does matter, and they're not doing that. I'm here. I'm here. I know what everyone is doing that lives here. As far as I don't know what people who are off a long ways away. And you are correct in some ways. Some people, I'm telling them what I want them to do, and they won't do it. But that doesn't stop me from telling them. Then they get to work with that their teacher has said, do this and don't do that. They get to work with that. If they want to work with that, go ahead. But I encourage people, when I have somebody sewing a robe, I encourage them to don't sew that robe, don't put on that robe, don't receive those vows unless you're ready to actually practice this as a monastic. In other words, you might want to put a lot of focus on this situation. And you'd have to ask each one, there's not that many monks. I don't know, what is there, a dozen? You have to ask each one how that's showing up for them, because I have a really strong personal relationship with every single one of them, including the ones that are sewing robes, which sometimes takes quite a while. Sometimes people sew robes for a while and then decide they don't want to do that. But I see what you're saying, but I don't think there's, I don't think there are any Pratyeka Buddhas here. People who live right in this community are with me and with other members of this community day after day after day after day, not just for a book study. They're here. You got a good dose of this. You lived here for 2 months. How comfortable was that for you?
Kishwaving, yeah, for me, it didn't matter much. I mean, I had my choices I made. I would attend some and I would miss some. But by and large, I thought the Sangha would have seen my face on even if it is not a daily basis, at least on a weekly basis. Whereas there are several folks that at least the Sangha doesn't get to see at all, interact at all
I
for
understand.
months on end, even years on end, perhaps. Bhavin.
Yeah. So I understand. I understand what you're referring to. And this is, we have this particular society doesn't particularly support a traditional kind of monastic practice, even though they're trying to do that at Green Gulch or Tassajara or other places that are trying to copy Japan. So have you met any of those people that go those places? You met these people and you continue to come here and study together with this group. It's not necessarily always agreeable, might not be comfortable, but we do it anyway. We come together and study these teachings with the idea of maybe we can make some, as it is said conventionally, make some progress on the path to begin to realize more closely and directly that this is an illusion. This is unreal. And so the way someone else does this, there's just so many different ways. And I'm having interviews with people and talking to people about their practice. And you could look at maybe at a dozen monks, you could look at them and see everyone's doing something differently. And some people are like towing the line, just right here as much as they can, so to speak, in the conventional sense, and they're just here all the time. And then other people are going this way and going that way. And the thing that I stress when they do that is communicate. CCC, communicate, cooperate, collaborate. If you are not communicating completely, which means you're doing a lot of listening, then the cooperate, collaborate are likely to be there somewhat, but will be won't be as clear, won't be as complete, will be fraught with misunderstandings and so on. So I'm really interested in what you have to say there about that, especially when you're saying that what you're seeing here looks like it could possibly engender or create a path for someone to be a Pratyeka Buddha. For those of you who don't know, Pratyeka Buddha is someone who's become enlightened themselves and are not too concerned about others. They're trying to be enlightened themselves. That's a kind of a classical description of it. This doesn't mean that person wouldn't be helpful to others, but they would think of themselves as being more enlightened than other people, or maybe enlightened and thinking that other people are not enlightened. Whereas on the Mahayana path, go from the Shravaka or a self-styled not self-styled, but listeners, Shravaka, someone who hears the Dharma and begins to practice, and the Pratyeka Buddha who could fluff themselves up like they're liberated or they're beginning to be liberated, or they know more than everyone else. And then the Bodhisattva Yana, where your whole practice is about other people. And this is something I talk about individually to monks, someone who's doing this. This is not about you. I mean, it may be about you in some ways, and maybe in some ways really intensely, but it's basically about working for the benefit of others. And the ultimate understanding is there really aren't any others. So it's quite a conundrum, what is that called when something is confusing? You just had a confusing one a minute ago when it didn't work. You know,
Dilemma?
huh?
Dilemma?
Yeah, dilemma. One of those things. So I don't know. I would like to hear more. If you have further questions around that, or you can maybe help me understand how this is showing up for you. Maybe I could have a few words to say about it.
Kishwang, no, the thing about putting others before oneself, especially as the cornerstone of a bodhisattva path,
Yes.
seems to be a high standard, or yeah, it's a high standard.
It is.
And it is in that context I was wondering, especially even if it is not all and sundry around the world, at least the Sangha, which is a pretty small group, I was wondering about how people who have taken the vow are putting the Sangha before themselves. That is where my dilemma.
So a lot of the practices, you may know, and the way that I talk about this, a lot of your time is going to be spent seeing how you can't quite do that. A lot of it is an awareness practice because there's a confusion about self and other. There's still a belief that this is a separate being from those guys. And so that a lot of it, so it's to work with that vow in such a way that you see that your self-centeredness, your self-deception, it starts to get stronger, and it can be extremely challenging. I have people tell me, practitioners, how they're endeavoring to work with that self-centeredness, and I encourage them. I say, just see it, continue to sit, continue to practice. And some people are, depending on the person, because I have done lots of different practices, I may give someone practices to do that I'm not giving to others. I don't teach as a blanket teaching. What I teach in a blanket way to everybody is shikantaza, because it's supposed to be a very, very simple practice that anyone can begin doing. And it's also an ultimate practice of which could be called a mahavipassana. It's just awareness of everything all at once, but that takes a while to train in that. And so but I can see where you would have some concern, but functioning as your teacher, talking to you occasionally when we talk about your practice, and talking to all these other people, which sometimes some people I talk to, like I said, once a month, some people more often than that, some people I'm texting back and forth daily with them, so that I'm in touch with what's happening with that particular person and their practice as much as I can without interfering with it, but trying to be supportive to them in the way that they're practicing with their particular mind stream. So everyone's wiring, everyone's karma, everyone's causes and conditions that brought you into this world are so different. But what we all have in common is we've all been inspired by the words of awakening, the words of the Buddha, just that you could actually return to some kind of basic sanity instead of continuing to spin around and fight with yourself or fight with others, or be at the mercy of your own emotions and so on. So you may realize your true nature, you may not. So there's no guarantee of anything, because it is a spiritual path. Further, Chisho, do you want to go further? Okay. So there's nothing to correct, even when it comes to a Pratyeka Buddha, nothing to correct. That person may need to, because of their dynamic, may need to go through that. But if I have a student who considers me their teacher, and they're functioning as a Pratyeka Buddha, won't last. I'm saying it won't last. It can't. I mean, how are they gonna, how am I gonna put up with that crap? I mean it. Ask anybody. Ask my wife. Not gonna put up with it. And when I say I'm not gonna put up with it, I'm not saying I'm gonna whack somebody or something, but I will make their help them see their extreme self-centeredness. So I'm doing the best I can. Maybe you should move here, become fully ordained and help me. See what you just stepped into?
I need to move this mountain with me. Bob.
Okay, yeah, that mountain, well, you can move the mountain. I can, just see, didn't I give you a name, Empty Mountain? Yeah, so your private name is Kuzan? Kuzan? Yeah, Empty Mountain. Chisho, Wisdom Hammer, Kuzan, Empty Mountain. So it should be pretty easy to move an empty mountain. I mean, if it's empty, can't weigh much. Yeah, move it up here and we'll put it. See, the mountain should be on the back side of the monastery, so we can put it in the sunshine bardo. No, I wouldn't fit in there. We'll figure out something. Just let us know when you're coming. And you really should visit us one of these days. I haven't seen you in a while.
Shishwang, I am visiting first week of October.
Oh, that's right, because you're taking off on that sojourn through the temples in Japan. What is that called again?
Shikoku.
Shikoku. Yeah, the same thing that Hyozan did, the same journey. What is 75 miles or something like that?
800 miles.
No kidding. You're gonna walk 800 miles? Is that true? Is he deceiving me? I didn't know it was that far. That's a lot of walking. That takes about 3 months.
2 months, about 45 days.
Anybody want to go with Chisho? Make sure he gets back. Okay, so is there a final question on anything in particular or everything in general about the forms? This is kind of an impromptu thing. I'm always happy to respond to any of your questions, for whatever direction they're coming from. If you have them, please don't hold back. Yes, Michelle.
Michelle Ryan. Might. I'm hearing the back and forth between you and Shisho. Might showing up for somebody else actually appear self-centered when maybe we're in a situation where, okay, maybe I can see a situation where maybe it's best that I don't help somebody.
If I understand your question, I would, yeah, there's no command to help somebody no matter what. You might not help them because that wouldn't be so helpful. You have a bigger picture of what's happening with them. But we don't always, that doesn't always come as some kind of a story about them. A lot of times it's just that you don't want to help them. But when you don't want to help someone in some way, don't force yourself to go that direction. Use that as an awareness practice. And it's like if you see a person on the street with a cardboard sign that says, please help, you should look at that. All the information you need is right in front of you. You don't have to know whether they're going to go buy drugs. You don't have to know any of that crap. That's all relative stuff. Help them or don't help them. But don't necessarily go back and forth on some kind of a teeter-totter about should I or shouldn't I. You'll know if you look right at them. If you have a strong awareness practice, then you're slowly over time are getting used to just receive what shows up without comment. And if you shows up without comment, you may find yourself going around the block and driving up or handing them some money, maybe, or not. Maybe you'll never do that. There's no correct way to do it. Am I getting close to what you're looking at?
Yeah, Michelle Ryan, I guess the term I was thinking of is might that, from an outsider's perspective, a certain action look self-centered,
Well, it could,
More so.
but it doesn't matter so much what people are saying. We're going by that all the time. We're wondering what people are thinking about what we're thinking about what they're thinking. It's just a constant comedy of errors or rotation, going around and around and around about everything, thinking about. So that's why it's necessary to just sit down, hold still, and just be very, very direct and precise about what is showing up in the mind stream without taking it into some kind of, that means this, it means that, it means this, it means that. Do that, and that will begin to show up the boundary between meditation and post-meditation, to speak about it very relatively, will begin to collapse. And it'll be the same consciousness if you're sitting on a cushion looking at the wall, or if you're getting in your car, or if you're talking to someone out in the parking area, or if you're having lunch with someone. It's the same consciousness. It starts to just receive everything. That can be done. And then you can observe how some things you do and some things you don't do, but you don't conclude things about them. You just function. And at the same time I'm saying that, you can't really just tell yourself you're functioning. That won't work. You can't say, well, I'm just functioning. Someone criticizes you about this or that, and you come back, well, I'm just functioning. Not so good. You just robbed a bank and you're telling me you're functioning? Well, I needed money. The bank was there. So I stole the money. But you can see it's a silly thing, but it's that kind of thing. Have a willingness to not know who you are, what's going on. You can do this. All of you can do this. It's difficult. It's challenging. But you can do it. Sitting practice of meditation, relate to the teacher, the teaching in the community, however you however it seems appropriate to. That's why I have this more open. And I'm not, I know Chisho was mentioning about someone who's self-styled, or they're giving too much, perhaps, maybe what you're saying, you're giving too much freedom to go in this way and that. Talk to any one of the monks and see if they feel like have too much freedom, or like they're not somewhat under the thumb of this person. I would say they're under my thumb, except for, hi, what's happening?
Say a question.
You have a question?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Should we help the homeless people or not when they're smoking?
Should we help homeless people when they're smoking?
Yeah.
Yeah, get them some cigarettes.
Okay.
But you don't smoke. If I hear about you smoking, I'm going to talk to your mom. Good question. Okay, I guess it's a good time to go the other direction. While you're there, pick me up a pack. With me here.
Yeah, would you like to?
You want me to sit back down? Can I stand up?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a form.
May the merit of this penetrate into all places, so that we and every sentient being together can realize the Buddha's way. Jiho Samshi Shi Song Samo Sam the 10 directions, the 3 times, all Buddhas, all venerable ones, Bodhisattvas, Mahasattvas, the great Prajna, Paramita.
O Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions and the 3 times.
please hear us. Please come down out of the light and protect Sokokoji Buddhist Temple Monastery, our Sangha, families, friends, and visitors. Heal everyone who is unhappy, sick, or suffering, and fill them with light.
Bye, friends.
Bye, friend.
Bye.